advance now.
Okay, so the environmental variation frugivory group so far has included all these people, and I want to include any of you who want to be involved in the future. We're actually at a very similar stage to Emily's group. So there are opportunities for starting new projects and also finishing up with them. So I want to go back to the questions that we've identified, sort of guiding questions. This is not necessarily the full range of questions that we want to explore, but kind of the big overarching things is explore the relationship between frugivory and selection. And that based really on the field dimensions grant that people were involved in. And then also focusing on the role of climatic variation affecting the scope of sexual selection. So the first theme I feel less qualified to talk to you about because it's the one that I've been less involved in, but we discussed that we need for these comparative studies that we want to do to integrate our in the RCN, we need some broadly applicable measures of the degree of frugivory across species of play. And you know, we thought this would match up really nicely with sort of the opportunities for sexual selection that the female choice is working on. So we discussed all of the different ways you can get those metrics of degree of frugivory based on direct foraging observations, fecal samples, vegetation samples, fecal isotopes, DNA barcoding. And we discussed the biases and the limitations of those. And decided last meeting on researching basically the feasibility of collecting these data across the plate in a larger scale. And doing a pilot of the DNA barcoding methods for species data that Betty already has fecal data and isotopic data. And I don't really know exactly how far that is come. And it's something we'll talk about a little bit more this afternoon. So once we get to this, it's a kind of, once we sort of identify what level of resolution we want to go, and what kind of data we go, and we want to do more of this. But the first product might be a method paper, a paper similar to kind of quantifying it. How far, what's the, you know, how far down this wish list of detail of diet is effective for quantifying the variation that we would like to exist among species. Okay. So, yeah, this is where I'm not quite sure exactly how far this is going. Getting to Marco, anybody wants to chime in about where we're at?
We would say we're not very far, but we should talk about this meeting.
At this meeting. We'll talk about more this afternoon. All right, next slide. In contrast, the part of this that's focused more on environmental variation has been the part that most of us have invested a bit more effort in. And this really grew out of discussions within the working group in our last meeting in particular, that many of us have come to the independent realization that, you know, basically precipitation, various different precipitation metrics in our different systems. We're having profound impacts in population biology, the species we study. For some of this, it was like how long the dry season was. For other people, it was sort of severe storm events, these sort of things. And so we thought about all the direct and indirect ways that precipitation act on birds. Yeah. And the ways then that would could potentially constrain or affect the scope for sexual selection. And this ranges from constraints in the timing of breeding, opportunities for male display, potentially changes in survival of various life cycles. So we decided to formalize these very productive discussions and ideas into a conceptual paper, sort of part review, part putting out some new ideas, and not making it Manakin specific, but drawing heavily from the comparatively rich data sets in the Manakin world for exploring these linkages. And then conclude that paper by proposing a set of testable hypotheses and comparative framework that could be kind of a roadmap for where we go next. So we sort of formalize these linkages, ranging across sort of things that happen in short-term, kind of real ecological time to more long-term evolutionary process, the various multiple ways that rainfall ultimately result in changes in perspective in these species. And I wanted to get into sort of like from my perspective, the lead of this is thinking about how rainfall affects individual performance and population, some population metrics. You can think of it as demographic rate, you can think of it as survival, but essentially, you know, building off the idea that species, we all know that species have thermal performance curves, and there's a range of temperatures in which they become faster, those drop off at the far ends, and the idea that they also have these sort of hybrid performance curves is something that I think underlies a lot of say species distribution modeling, for instance, but hasn't been formalized in the literature, and actually the implications of this haven't been explored for thinking about how species are distributed and how these kind of conflicting results that we sometimes find in our Manakin systems can be reconciled. So to walk you through here, if you think about a single species distributed along some, you know, subset of all the potential precipitation regimes that it could potentially live in, you got a bunch of species. They all have different curves. So just taking, for example, you know, the species I work in likes the really, really wet stuff. There are species that are distributed in different places. And so we, what do we know about what shapes those curves in the and on the dry ends of the spectrum, for many species, that either the implicit assumption or sometimes the demonstrated linkage is there between increases in fitness in a particularly wet year, is that often in those drier places, a wetter year means higher plant productivity, which can cascade up through the system, resulting in more frequent Manakins and potentially higher fitness. Okay. But what about on that wet end? And that's, I think, where a lot of the big unknowns are, and there are potentially multiple different mechanisms that could constrain species on the wet ends of those gradients. So in really wet places, plants are limited by water, but they might be limited by sunlight. So more rain is bad because of the same productivity questions. We see in my Manakins constraints on foraging time during really wet years. In some cases, increased adult mortality, reduced mass survival. So there's multiple potential mechanisms. We know very little about those. Okay, so if you think about taking a slice across any point, you know, your study cycle, okay? If we're in a pretty dry place, you can look at the slopes of these curves and do that for all the species, and what you see is that typically those relationships are going to be positive, right? So in the really dry places, the wet year is going to be good for almost all the species there. If you do that in a really wet area, we expect those to be pretty much all negative, right? If you do it somewhere in the middle, you're going to get all these things. So if you plot all the slopes together, what you're going to get is for the consequences of a wetter year varying across these mean and gradients. And there's going to be a place in the middle where there's really not going to be any kind of consistent relationship between you know, variation in the weather and overall in the community, what you expect in terms of those predictions from this, this framework that the place where this is going to sort of flip to being overall more of a negative response is going to be places that are never water limited. Okay? This zone in the middle should be the places where life histories are least constrained by these precipitation constraints. Makes predictions about when birds should breed. So this is a kind of low-hanging fruit, I think, from a comparative context, because phenological breeding phenology data is relatively easy to gather from even specimens in the literature. And let's see what else. So this more predictions of okay. So the other thing is that we know that manakins live in kind of ignored temperature, right? But what happens at higher elevations? And how does temperature interact with rainfall? So rain increases the cost of thermoregulation. You go up in elevation, that means it becomes colder. So what this should do is essentially shift those optimal zones towards the drier end of the spectrum. So we've basically developed this framework, wrote an outline, assigned people pieces to write. Those pieces came in over a very long time period, and we compiled them. So what we have right now is essentially a lot of text that maybe isn't organized the best way, but we have a lot of material there to work. And so I uploaded that draft to the wiki site. The presentation page is there. You can read it. What we want to do in this meeting is to get this as close to finished as possible. Okay. We want to write the bits that are missing. We want to, well, first of all, figure out whether the organization we have now is successful. So, if it's not, okay. How to best get the message across, finish the bits, edit the bits that have been written, and develop sort of the understanding and timeline for the other thing we want to do, though, is to figure out what to do next. And so there are multiple different options. One is actually testing some of these predictions. Another one would be this diet paper that we sort of discussed earlier on. A grant proposal. There are lots of different options, and so that's one of the things that we want also achieve. Yeah. So there are multiple ways that you can be involved if you aren't already.